In the quiet town of Briarwood, tucked away on a narrow cobblestone street, stood an old, unassuming shop. The sign above the door read Madeline's Curiosities. To most passers-by, it was just another antique store, but to doll collectors, it was a hidden gem. Inside, porcelain faces with glassy eyes lined the shelves, each one a masterpiece of craftsmanship and history. 4 collectors, each driven by a passion for rare dolls, had arrived at Madeline's by different paths. Emma, an elderly woman with a keen eye for Victorian-era dolls, led the group. With her were Robert, a middle-aged man whose extensive collection rivaled museums, Lila, a young woman whose fascination with dolls bordered on obsession, and Daniel, a historian who viewed dolls as a way to preserve the past. The doorbell tinkled as they entered, and the musty scent of aged wood and old fabric filled their nostrils. The shop's interior was dim, the only light coming from dusty chandeliers that cast eerie shadows on the walls. Madeline, the shop's owner, greeted them with a warm but peculiar smile. Her eyes, a shade too bright, seemed to hold secrets. "Welcome to my little collection," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "Feel free to look around. Each doll has a story, and I'd be happy to share them." The collectors dispersed, each drawn to different corners of the shop. Emma gravitated towards a display of Victorian dolls, their delicate features and intricate dresses captivating her. Robert examined a shelf of 18th century porcelain dolls, noting the fine details of their hand-painted faces. Lila wandered deeper into the shop, her eyes wide with wonder, while Daniel lingered near the entrance, taking in the atmosphere. As they explored, a feeling of unease began to settle over them. The dolls' eyes seemed to follow their every move, their expressions almost lifelike in the flickering light. Emma picked up a doll in a blue satin dress, admiring its craftsmanship, but as she turned it in her hands, she felt a chill run down her spine. The doll's eyes, she swore, had shifted. "Madeline, this one is exquisite," Emma said, her voice wavering slightly. "What's its story?" Madeline approached, her smile never faltering. "Ah, that one is special. It once belonged to a little girl named Eleanor. She loved it dearly until—" Her voice trailed off, and she gave a small, enigmatic smile. Tragedy struck, as it often does. A shiver passed through the group. They continued browsing, but the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with an unspoken tension. Lila found herself drawn to a small, dusty alcove at the back of the shop. There she discovered a doll, unlike any she had ever seen. It was dressed in a faded white gown, its face cracked and worn, but its eyes were hauntingly real. "Daniel, come look at this," Lila called out. Her voice hushed. Daniel joined her, his curiosity piqued. He reached out to touch the doll, but as his fingers brushed its face, he recoiled in shock. "It's warm," he whispered, his heart racing. "This doll is warm." Robert and Emma joined them, drawn by their whispers. The 4 stood in silence, staring at the doll. A sense of dread settled over them, heavy and inescapable. Madeline appeared behind them, her presence almost ghostly. "That one," she said softly, "is very special. It's said to be possessed by the spirit of a child who met a terrible fate." The collectors exchanged uneasy glances. "Possessed?" Robert echoed, his skepticism wavering. Madeline nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Many of these dolls are. They hold the spirits of children who were sacrificed in dark rituals long ago. Their souls were bound to these dolls, cursed to remain here forever." A cold silence enveloped the room. The collectors' fascination turned to fear, their passion for dolls now tainted with the horror of the truth. They wanted to leave, but something held them back, a morbid curiosity mingled with a sense of impending doom. As the hours passed, strange things began to happen. The dolls seemed to move on their own, their eyes blinking, their heads turning. Whispers filled the air, soft and sinister, as if the spirits were trying to communicate. The collectors huddled together, their fear palpable. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the shop into darkness. Panic set in as they fumbled for their phones, the faint glow of their screens barely piercing the blackness. In the shadows, they saw movement, small figures darting about, their giggles echoing eerily. Emma screamed as she felt tiny hands grab her ankles, pulling her down. Robert and Daniel rushed to help, but they too were attacked, the doll's small, cold hands clawing at them. Lila, paralyzed with fear, watched in horror as the dolls came to life, their innocent faces twisted into grotesque masks of malevolence. In the chaos, Madeline stood by, her smile never fading. "You wanted to know their stories," she said softly. "Now you'll become a part of them." The dolls dragged the collectors deeper into the shop, their resistance futile. They were pulled into a hidden room, a dark, dank space filled with more dolls, each one bearing the mark of a tortured soul. The collectors' screams echoed through the shop, mingling with the dolls' sinister laughter. And then, silence. The shop was still once more, the dolls back in their places, their eyes glassy and lifeless. Madeline walked to the front door, flipping the sign to closed. She glanced back at the shop, her eyes lingering on the new dolls that now adorned the shelves. Each one had a familiar face, a reminder of the collectors who had come seeking treasures and found only terror. Madeline's smile widened. "Welcome to my collection," she whispered.